biggest marketing advice you can give to content marketers for 2025?
Video, for sure. It's number one, by the way, video. Everybody wants to invest and get better at video, whether those be digital events or whether they be physical events. But for me as a solo practitioner or a small business, if I can manage one remarkable idea every week, I'm doing pretty damn good.
Sage advice from Robert Rose, the content marketing guru extraordinaire. This has been such a important conversation, I think, for content marketers. And so I want to thank you for sharing your insights. Welcome to the Digital Accomplice Podcast. Today we're joined by Robert Rose, content marketing expert, and he's from the Content Advisory. And welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you here because you are definitely one of the leaders in the content marketing industry, and we value your opinion. So get ready, buckle up, everybody. So I like to start out with a nice softball, easy question. What would be like a recent content marketing success that you've enjoyed?
You mean someone else's content marketing success?
It can be your marketing or for clients, but
sure.
Basically a recent success that's gone well that you want to share.
The one I would point to right now is, and only because it's top of mind, is my friends at Salesforce. They just won Content Marketer Project of the Year for their new Sales Blazer community. And the reason I like it so much is because, these days, owned media, our website, our resource center, our blogs, whatever it is, have got to offer some kind of differentiated value because so much of us just spend our days and consume content in Facebook or LinkedIn, Google, Netflix, Amazon. It's a very small number of places that we spend all of our time. And so owned media has become extraordinarily difficult. And what they've been able to do is create a whole curriculum and a community and just a really brilliant way of bringing sales professionals together and helping them develop professionally in a wonderful, wonderful new owned media platform. And it's just a great example of good content marketing with really a focus on enablement more than anything else.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Salesforce sounds like a good one to emulate if you can.
Yeah.
So what would you say then is like a challenge, a marketing challenge that you're facing right now, a content marketing challenge, and what are you doing about it?
It's related to the Salesforce answer, actually, which is what we've seen over the last, call it 6 or 8, or even really the last couple of years post-pandemic, is content more and more moving out to the edges, right? What I mean by that is sort of the re-emergence of social media as the place where people consume content. And if you look at the data, what we've started to see are people are consuming content on social media, but we're actually engaging, following, and commenting less. So the social part of social media is becoming less social. And the interesting thing there is, as marketers, what we're trying to do is create value there, right? So in many ways, it's about how do we move our best ideas out to the edges. And honestly, I hate it because it's, for years and years, my mantra has been, don't build your house on rented land and don't put so much effort into this. And for a while, social media was perfect for that, right? It was, clever headline plus a link plus, maybe a short abstract and a link to your blog post or a link to your website or your community or your lead magnet or whatever it happened to be. And that worked, and that just no longer works any longer, right? We've all been TikToked, right? Which is the For You tab, which is now so prevalent in every social media channel. Basically means that audience you spent so long building on whatever social media channel just isn't as relevant anymore, right? The good news is if you don't have a big audience, you can resonate and you can go viral and you can actually get traction with your posts. The bad news is if you spent all this time building an audience, it just doesn't matter like it used to. And so, but it's the oxygen that we have to breathe right now. So it's a challenge for sure. That combined with sort of the 0-click search and a lot of the search, being broken and the decrease of organic search relevance has really just put the world of hurt on our owned media strategies, which of course is the core of content marketing. So it's been one of the biggest challenges that we've had over the last, year and a half.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned how we've all gotten TikToked, which I like that way of saying it. It's so true. So I'm a video professional, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to basically use my skills to TikTok the world for hire. And,
Right.
and so I'm kind of curious, what are you focused on with your video strategy? What are you doing with video now, and what would you like to be doing?
Yeah, and again, it segues nicely from the biggest challenge, because I don't know that we have it figured out yet, but we have been really focused on YouTube. And YouTube is becoming a huge consumption channel. It was already the second largest search engine. So one of the things that I often talk to my clients about is you should have a video strategy, even if you don't have a video strategy, right? In other words, even if you're just putting video so that you can rank in organic search on YouTube, it's a good idea. But beyond that, getting good at it and getting skilled and polished at creating just a very valuable YouTube channel for YouTube Shorts, plus all of the long form video, plus everything that is happening on YouTube has really been a focus of us. From my own sort of putting our podcast on video, putting sort of our webinars on YouTube, putting really driving as much high quality experiences as we can into YouTube has been a big focus for us.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, because we're not the only ones who got that memo, right? So it's challenging for sure.
Yeah. So I'd imagine you're looking at AI tools like we all are. We got to talk about AI. So like, I'm kind of curious, as you're trying to figure this stuff out, what are you doing with AI, and what's working there and what's not?
Sure. Well, where I've been finding a lot of value in AI is helping, certainly when it comes to video, helping with post-production and editing. I mean, Descript is just an amazing tool. And from an other elements of AI that have value, I'm finding it most helpful in creating derivative content, right? What I mean by that is, if I've written a script, or if I've written a blog post, or if I've written some long form piece of content, having AI do the one paragraph version, the one page version, the short 2-sentence version, come up with some headlines for me, come up with the abstract, and basically the I call it the content about the content. So it's really helping, it's all stuff you have to write, you have to create, because you need to design, a LinkedIn post that is different from what you would put into the abstract of the YouTube video, which is different than you would put onto a Threads post, which is different than you're going to put on your Facebook post, which is different than you're going to send in your email to your audiences. But it's all the same story that you created. You just need to create all that derivative content to be able to design it specifically for that particular channel. So I'm finding a tremendous amount of value in just using AI to help me construct those things, which helps me move a lot faster.
Yeah, and you sort of already answered the next question, so I want to kind of rephrase it. I was going to ask you about repurposing content, which you've just answered. Is that's how you're using AI, is to repurpose content. And so I find myself in a weird meta situation now, is that this show, the content that I'm producing, is about repurposing the content. And so I'm going to repurpose this content. So how do you, I'm kind of curious, how do you look at like the content about the content, and what are the sort of guardrails about like what to do and what not to do? Because you can kind of keep going down the rabbit hole until it's the content about the content about the content about the content. So
Sure. Yeah.
so how do you put guardrails on what you're going to do there?
So when we start to think about what we're doing with all of the places that we want to place things, right? So coming back to the idea of the content moving out to the edges, right? So the thing that we're creating, whether that's a documentary, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a thing, in many ways, what we want to do is kind of save that special experience for our own channel, right? Because that's where we want to pull in, build audiences, build addressability of those audiences, be able to talk with them, and so that they subscribe to us and that we know who they are, and we can, do all the things that we want to do as marketers. But as much of that stuff is now moving out, we used to have this, 10 years ago, we talked about this idea of omni-channel, right? Where you need to be everywhere. And I always hated omni-channel as a term because it assumed that you needed to be everywhere. And of course, you don't need to be everywhere. You need to be everywhere where your customer is aggregating and you want to get your message in front of them. And you want to do so because marketing is about cost. You want to do so as efficiently as possible. And so when you're reusing content, repurposing content, one of the biggest traps we fall into is we feel like we have to create new content across all that omni-channel, right? So it's like, I need a YouTube post, I need an email, I need a Facebook post, I need a LinkedIn post, but you don't. You need one idea that you then repurpose in multiple places. The guardrails are today, each one of those things has to, it used to be that you could just cut and paste, right? You could write that one abstract, you cut and paste that to LinkedIn, you use that for, your Facebook post, you use that for your Twitter, you use that, character count aside, basically the same thing became the same thing. Now you want to design the content experience in each of those things to be very, very specific for that platform. So when you're repurposing this podcast, you're going to have clips for, I'm assuming, for YouTube, shorts. You're going to have probably the whole version of it up on YouTube. Each one of those will have an abstract, but each one of those will be different, right? They won't just be the copy and paste of one. And so each one of those clips will be different. Each one of those ideas will be different. And you've got to design it for that particular channel. And anything you can do then to help you scale that effort is better, because at that point, basically, you're just trying to get it into the right, form factor, right? The right, designed for the right thing. And the original idea remains itself, the original story, et cetera. And so that's the real purpose of repurposing content, is to make it specific for the experience you want to create. And thus the guardrails become, how do I do that? How do I do that in the most optimal, efficient way that I possibly can?
Right. And I'm kind of curious, with all the repurposing that we're all doing, how do you look at content performance? If it's not necessarily about building audience now, things we've gotten TikToked, how are you going to measure the performance of all the content that you're putting out there? What's the big idea there?
Yeah, well, the big idea is that, and it sounds like a big no duh, but it's the one thing that so few do, which is to actually set a goal or objective for the content, right? Specific to its purpose, right? So what is the purpose? What is the goal? What is the objective of that YouTube short versus what's the goal and objective of the long form of YouTube? There may be two different goals and objectives for those things, and I would argue there probably should be, right? One is trying to get you deeply, ingrained and or infused into the bigger, it's a time commitment, right? It's going to be 30, 45 minutes or whatever of your time. So at the end of that, what's the goal or the purpose? Well, the goal or the purpose is I want to seek out and subscribe to that thing because I don't want to miss another episode. The short, its goal or purpose may be simply to drive awareness of the longer thing, right? And so its call to action or its next best experience that you want people to click on would be, come and see the whole episode, or basically come and see our, podcast page or whatever it is. It's an awareness or interest building purpose or goal, and so on and so forth. Each one of those things has a purpose, an objective, and a goal. And I measure it against that. Like, how much traffic did my YouTube short create to my podcast page? How many subscribers am I actually gathering from my long form YouTube podcast? How many, clicks through to my website did I get from that LinkedIn post? How much, downloads or leads did I create from that piece of long form thought leadership that I've just created? So that's the key, is to put together not only just the content repurposing plan, but the measurement and objectives for all of those things as you're working forward.
Right. And that's a great segue to sort of the final set question is, it's budgeting season now. People are planning for 2025. They're overwhelmed. They're confused. They don't know where to start. Let's boil it down for them. What's like the number one biggest marketing advice you can give to content marketers for 2025?
And it's funny just because I just literally wrote about this this week, which is, it is budgeting season. We are getting ready to plan for 25, and everybody right now is thinking about AI, of course, like you mentioned in the beginning, right? Where it's literally sucking all the oxygen out of the room at the moment for, well, should we or shouldn't we? And what should it look like? And what should it, what should it do? There are other technologies that are being considered, right? Whether it's digital asset management, whether it's marketing analytics, whether it's marketing automation, whether it's a CRM system. There are technology questions for budgeting and how we're starting to plan. The two biggest trends that we see from pure platform perspectives in budgeting, for marketers, and this is across B2C and B2B. Video, for sure. It's number one, by the way, video. Everybody wants to invest and get better at video. There's a zig and zag sort of idea there, but let's just use that broadly speaking. So getting good at video is important. It's going to be really important. The second one is events, right? Whether those be digital events or whether they be physical events, those are the two things that are sort of driving net new innovation at the moment. And what I would say is, so what are we going to stop doing in 2025 in terms of spending money on? What I've been talking with clients about is getting out from the walls of the PDF file, right? So we just don't need more PDF files in our life. So anything we can do to help create more structured experiences, whether that be a resource center, a blog, or, that's not, an ebook that is not a PDF file, that's always a good focus as well for 25, a good New Year's resolution, if you will. And then from a technology investment perspective, the trends that we're seeing anyway are video, things like Descript and things like that are helping us repurpose and do content faster and better. And more specifically with video, services that can help us create high quality stuff, right? Really high quality. It's because the shooting on an iPhone is just not good enough anymore. It's just not good enough. You just have to have a level of quality. And that includes everything from doing your digital webinar to the way that you show up on a podcast to, all those kinds of things. Just if you're a marketing team of 1 or 100, you've got to invest in ways to look good online.
Yeah. There you go. That's the biggest piece of marketing advice from Robert Rose. Look good online.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. I mean, I have a face for radio. So, so for podcasting, it's always a tough one for me to get on video, but you gotta get the Amazon packages at your door, and you gotta hire people who know what they're doing to basically be able to create that look, no matter, to make you look as good as you possibly can.
Right. So that's basically where I want to take the conversation from here is, you're the content marketing guru. I'm the video expert. I've been doing video for 30 years. And I'm, recently pivoting to basically try and help content marketers do more with video and make it better. So I thought we could put our heads together and figure out how we can serve this community and what sort of thoughts you thought about, like, the best way to go about doing that. You mentioned making it look better. And I thought that's a good place to start because I think people get hung up on, like, I don't know, like, is it good enough? Like, do I feel comfortable on camera? That's sort of like that idea, I think, is kind of like daunting for a lot of people, but they want to do video. How are they going to get past that, do you think, as a whole group?
Well, I think there's a couple of pieces to it. I mean, there's certainly a technical production aspect to it, right? But let's put that aside for the moment because that can be solved, right? That's an easy solve. So the challenge that I find and that I hear from clients all the time is sort of the big challenge is, one, what can we do with video that's not just a talking head of my CEO talking about the vision of the company or talking our VP of marketing or interviews with a customer, right? Just talking head stuff, which honestly, none of us need more of, right? None of us need more talking heads in our life. And here we are as talking heads, of course. But the idea, though, is what more can we do to start to sprinkle in so that all of our video isn't just talking heads? And in so many ways, so for example, a documentary, or can we create explainer videos, or can we create things that have deeper meaning and story, right? So those kinds of things are usually just not a muscle that most marketing teams have exercised before. So you say, oh, explainer video, tell me what your explainer video is. And it's like, well, we'll just stick, quick time and basically record a demo of our software. It's like, no, that's No, I mean, do that. Yeah, for sure. Do that. But no, that's not an explainer video. Explainer video is show me how everybody works with it. And that means showing people, it means showing screenshots, it means showing sort of the context of what it looks like. And, so how do you create that in a beautiful way that is compelling and that actually tells a story that is actually valuable to those that are consuming it so that people want to consume it? And that's simply thinking about the video that we're creating as a product, right? It is one of the products of the company. So we should put the same care and feeding into the quality of it. And I don't mean, again, the technology or the production of it. I mean more the quality of the story, the script, the how we're actually, the order, what the imagery looks like, rather than how it's shot or whatever, which of course that can be, an important component too, but that one's easily solved. The harder part is actually doing something that's meaningful.
Right. This is such an interesting point to me because I agree with everything you just said that yes, we need the high quality content. But I want to kind of circle back on that idea that like nobody needs more talking head stuff because I think we'd agree that there is some value, right? It's not as valuable as the more produced stuff. And I feel like there's an argument that we need both. Does that sound true? Because I think to produce this stuff at
We,
scale, we need to kind of consistently get stuff out there. So there has to
we do
be.
need, yeah, we do need both. But to the extent possible, what we want to start to try and do is take it out of, and arguably we've done that here, right? I mean, the audience that's watching this can see, right, that I have a bit of care and feeding into the way that I'm looking. It's not your typical sort of Zoom video thing. I've got a professional level camera, I've got professional level microphone, we've got, sort of a bit of lighting on our set, which is ostensibly the office, et cetera. You have the same thing going. You've put care and feeding into the look of it. So it starts to look a little more like a classic news broadcast or what someone would classically be comfortable seeing on television or streaming media rather than just two people on Zoom, right? And so that level of professionality is certainly required these days. I still see, let's call them video podcasts, if you will, from big companies where it's, a VP of marketing and their guest, and the guest is in an airport on a Zoom, right? I mean, it's like, that's just not good enough anymore. That's the kind of thing we need to start to move away from, which is the post-pandemic sort of everybody had to be on Zoom. So everybody sort of got comfortable with being on camera. And so every piece of content now that is a webinar or whatever is just a bunch of people on Zoom. And I'm using Zoom as an example here. It could be any of the platforms, right? It can be any of those platforms. And so, and I'll give you an example of this. I was just on a presentation as an event that Intuit MailChimp did. And it was a virtual event. They had a wonderful virtual event. They had, 10 or 15,000 people on this event. And instead of doing it on Zoom where everybody was just talking heads, they actually got and rented a proper studio with full screen. So you saw everybody from head to foot. They walked around. They had a news set. They had a couch set. They had a keynote set. They had 3 sets, 3 different cameras doing different angles, live, the whole thing. It looked like a TV show. That's the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about when we create content these days that, yes, is ostensibly talking heads, but it's not just talking heads, right? It's shot like a talk show, or it's shot, you know what I mean? And so those kinds of paradigms we need to start bringing to our content marketing.
Yeah, it's something that I think I intuitively know, you intuitively know, but I find it so difficult to start to make that a convincing argument other than just saying like it's going to be better. Like it'll look better, but like how will that really perform better for me? Like you won't really know until you do it, right? Like it's going to probably perform better. It's probably going to help stand out, but like how do you look at that argument of like making the
Well, but
case
it has
before
to,
you
yeah.
invest?
So it's both things, right? It's going back to the idea that, yes, high production values matter, but then the reason I focused on this in the first point was if the content isn't good, then it doesn't matter how well it's shot.
Right.
And so you have to have good content. And if you don't feel like you have the content to justify the production, you got to ask yourself, is the content worth doing anyway? Right. You know, and so forever, the idea has been, let's just get it out. Let's just ship it. Let's just get, yeah, we need to do an interview with our CEO and he's going to explain the new brand of the company, or he's going to explain why this event that a customer should attend is so great, or whatever the CEO needs to do. And it's like, yeah, it's that content is going to be fine. So just sticking him in a chair, and pointing a camera at him and sort of just doing it is fine. It's like, no, it's not. If you care enough about it, if you care that the message is seen and is impactful and differentiated, take the time to actually make it a thing. And that's really the difference here. It's like, if you don't care, right, then don't. And if you don't care, then don't. But then don't expect it to perform. That's the idea.
Right. Yeah. I always think of it sort of like when you think about investing in video quality, like the metaphor I use is like, if you're going to go on a date, you're going to put on a nice outfit, you're going to, get a haircut or whatever. So you're going to put your best foot forward on your personal appearance, and nobody really questions the value of that. They just know that, yeah, that's a good idea. That's going to show better. But when it comes to video content, I always find that like, they don't want to take the time to, we're going to have to order some lights and make my desk setup look better. And like, it's not, I don't want to take the time to do it. Yeah, it would look better, but we don't have the time. But you bring up such a great point. I feel like I just need to find another way to communicate that to content marketers, because like you pointed out, they're doing it. They're just shipping it. Right. So we got to help them somehow get over that hang up, I think.
Right. Well, it's just, if you want to be good, right? If you want to be good at it, right? Then you take the time, and and it's just like, you wouldn't let sort of, I mean, there's a lot of businesses who actually do this, but you wouldn't let the intern just slap together a blog post for your big, thought leadership blog, right? It's kind of the same idea, right? Are you just going to are you just going to slap together a script for somebody to say something and then stick it on an iPhone video? It's like, no, that just, it just shows how much you care.
Yeah.
And like it or not, and again, we can come back to, you may not like it, but the point is that we are at a point now with the democratization of the technology and the production that people judge it. They're not comparing you to what your competitors are doing. People are comparing you to CNN. They're comparing you to Netflix. They're comparing you to the last great piece of video content that they saw. Fair or unfair, that's what they're doing. And so that's the level at which you have to compete with your content, because otherwise you look subpar.
Right. So balance that with the idea of getting content out there at scale and frequency. Part of the test of this video podcast was, hey, let's come up with a strategy that's sustainable, where I can take a long form video and then put shorts out every single day. So I start with the idea of video every day. And when I talk to clients, it's like, if you don't have a video strategy for video every day, you kind of are conceding like you're going to not stand out. How do you look at the frequency issue as far as what you would recommend?
I've said for a million years, and I still believe it, that consistency is more important than frequency. And so the consistency part is incredibly important. So if you make a video a week, or a post a week, or a big idea, across multiple channels, one per week, great, but do one per week, right? Do it, right? If you're on every day, if that's your brand, if that's your strategy, if that's your approach, yes, do one every single day, right? So frequency is part of the overarching strategy. And so I would say, I used to say a long time ago, do as much content that you feel like you can be great at. And I've now revised that, because I don't know that that's the greatest advice. What I've revised that advice to be is, do as little content as you possibly can to create the impact you want to create. And so, in other words, we have more things to do in our lives as marketers than create content. We have other parts of our job. So in order to create the most differentiating, experiences that we can, inherently we're going to create less. It's just a fact of life, right? You're going to create less, because I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for myself, I don't have that many remarkable ideas, right? So when I have a remarkable idea, I want to get it out in as many ways as I possibly can. And so I don't have enough remarkable ideas every day of the week to do that level of quality. And so for me, and again, this is completely independent on what the brand is, how big the company is, what its strategy is. But for me as a solo practitioner or a small business, if I can manage one remarkable idea every week, I'm doing pretty damn good. So I'll stick with that. So frequency becomes a part of the overarching strategy. And then as a key piece of that is, are we taking a big idea and then, to our earlier discussion, repurposing it into as many possible iterations as we can?
Okay. Yeah. So then I think let's kind of give a parting thought here for content marketers who say, yes, I know I want to do more video. Yes, I know I need a video strategy. How do I fit that into my marketing strategy? What do I do next? What would be sort of your advice for the next step for making video a real part of your 2025 strategy?
So what we have to recognize is that video, audio, and let's call it text and images, right? Those are all containers. Those are containers of content. Video and audio differ from text and imagery typically because they're linear, right? In other words, you have to experience them in a linear fashion. That's really the only difference, other than the obvious differences that one is, video and the one is audio and ears only, and, et cetera. And so beyond sort of the experiential differences, the major difference between video and audio and text and imagery is video is best experienced. You can't just, you can't skim through it, basically. You have to actually experience the thing linearly. And so you start to ask yourself, as we're putting together our content strategy, the broader marketing strategy, within that marketing strategy, the content strategy, the stories that we want to tell, certain stories will lend themselves better toward one container or the other. So many times what marketers do is they start with the container first. In other words, they say, I need a video, I need a white paper, I need an email, I need a landing page, I need a website, I need an ebook. And then they go, great, now how do we pour content into that? It's like, no, reverse that thinking. What is the story first? What's the remarkable idea that I want to get out into the world? And then start thinking, great, there's one remarkable idea, there's another remarkable idea, there's another remarkable idea. Now, what are the best containers for that idea? For one idea, video may be the only container that makes sense. Or you go, no, it could be a video, but we could also transcribe that into a bunch of blog posts. We could actually repurpose that into 3 webinars. We could transport it, you know what I mean? It's like we can start then thinking about how do we repurpose the core anchor container into multiple formats that might be secondary or promotional or whatever they may be. But think story first and then container, because then you'll be applying the right ideas to the right kind of container. And video needs that specificity, because I've just seen so many ideas. It's like, no, this would have been a much better blog post, but you made it a video simply because that's the way you thought about it, right? And vice versa. This wonderful blog post is amazing, remarkable idea. It's like, man, that would have made such a cool explainer video. But you didn't do that, right? You didn't because it was why? Because you needed a blog post for Friday. So you got to start working in this idea of story first, then container, and figuring out which ones will make the best, most remarkable videos.
There you go. Start with story first. Sage
Yep.
advice from Robert Rose, the content marketing guru extraordinaire. This has been such a important conversation, I think, for content marketers, and so I want to thank you for sharing your insights. And if people are listening and they want to get in touch with you and get more of the Robert Rose experience, what should they do?
They can hit me up at my website, which my personal website is robertrose.net. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with everybody on LinkedIn, of course. And then we have our own little podcast that we do on video, and we're, as I said, we're trying to make a thing about it and on YouTube as well, which is thisoldmarketing.com.
Yeah, great show. I give a one vote for that one. Robert, thanks again for joining us on the show. That's a wrap, everybody. All right, we did it, Robert. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. That was
was
fun.